My name is Shua. This happened in 2015 in Duluth, Minnesota. My family and I always go on a camping trip to Duluth. This time around, when we went, it was with a lot more family members than normal because my two older uncles came from Afghanistan. One is a Marine and the other is an Army Ranger. My father asked if my Army uncle could invite some of his Ranger friends to come camping with us. He agreed and invited 10 of his guys to come along. With this camping trip set, there was a total of 9 families, 11 Army guys, and 1 Marine. About 35 of us. Oh wow, that's a lot of you guys. Our camping trip in Duluth is a beautiful place. We had an open area with a fire pit in the center, then about 50 yards it has a hill which leads down to another small open area with a fire pit. And then another hill that leads down to a waterfall and river that leads to Fish Lake. My mother, aunts, and the girl cousins began setting up lunch for everyone as the men began unloading and setting up camp. It was around 4 p.m. and everybody was getting ready to go for a swim. As we went downhill towards the second open area, we saw my uncles and their Army guys finishing up camp and them pulling this huge broken down pine tree in the water. We helped them by tying the trunk of the tree to the rocks on the shore and then to the top of the trees on the other side of the river. It was like a huge bridge that we could cross back and forth. As we began swimming, I went by the waterfall. As I was by the waterfall, I began to hear something that sounded like someone mumbling words. As I got closer, I heard a scream and then was tugged under the water. I was kicking and trying to swim up, but while that was happening, I was just going in deeper and deeper into the river. I then saw my 2 girl cousins under the water who came and tried to pull me up, but it felt like I was so heavy and they were only pulling me up slowly. One of my uncle's rangers dove in and all 3 of them pulled me out. In a panic, I screamed and gasped for air as my uncle's ranger was swimming and pulling me to shore. As I was gasping for air, I looked back towards the base of the waterfall and saw a woman's head peeping out from the waterfall. She was smiling and looked as if she was chuckling. I screamed as we got to shore and pointed at the waterfall and told everybody about what happened. My father and uncles are very protective, so they took their guns and pointed it at the waterfall. My dad shouted to whatever it was to leave us alone. We then returned to the main camp where we set up lunch and I was scolded by my mom. That night, during dinner, I sat by my Marine uncle. I explained to him how I saw a woman under the waterfall. She was laughing at me and had small strands of long hair. My uncle stopped eating and asked, "Was the hair white?" I raised my voice and told him, "Yes." My uncle then told me something chilling. He explained, "After your dad took the cousins and some aunts back to the main camp area, your Army Ranger uncle and myself didn't have a very good vibe. So we swam up to the waterfall and 2 rangers went to the top of the waterfall. We didn't find anything, but when we reached through the waterfall where you saw the woman's head, I pulled out a chunk of white hair. I was so scared and chills ran down my spine. My uncle said to not be afraid because there were a lot of them to protect us. We then heard a loud scream from the river area. My uncles and the guys took out their guns and took off running towards the camp area in the river. 3 of my girl cousins and I followed. As we got to the hill, we saw that all of their tents were taken down and their fire pit was blazing. My Army uncle told everyone to stay back and took all the guys to go and check out the tents. As they were checking out the tents, I kept on hearing a whisper of someone or something say, "Come here." When I heard this, I had the sudden urge to go to the river. As I went down the hill and past my uncle's, I got to the river. The whisper was now louder than ever. I wanted to go into the river for some odd reason, almost as if I was possessed. My uncles then grabbed both of my arms and pointed to the river right next to our log bridge. In the water, there was a floating duck with the face of a woman. It was floating and saying my name. It was calling out my name and telling me to follow it, to come here. We were all shocked. The Army guys by their camp area was also in shock. I was frozen in place and started crying. I was confused as to how this was all happening. Then one of my uncles shot the duck. With the sound of the gunfire, I felt like I was finally released. This duck, or whatever the thing was, slowly turned upside down and went into the water. The strange thing was that no feet rose up. It just disappeared into the water. All of us then rushed back to the main camp area and explained everything to our parents and the older family members. My mom decided that we'll be leaving as soon as the sun broke the night sky. My uncles and their army guys decided to stay up at the main campsite to watch over everyone. Returning to my tent with my girl cousins, we got into our sleeping bags. Scared and shaken up, none of us wanted to sleep. I was glad to hear my uncles and the soldiers up and talking, when all of a sudden, I heard what sounded like someone turning around in their sleeping bag. I then began to hear whispers and laughs coming from my feet. I slowly looked down and, to my horror, I saw that lady's face pushing through our tent. I screamed so loudly it woke up my cousins, and they also saw the lady's face pushing through our tent. The whole thing began to shake, and then we all exited the tent as fast as possible. Our uncles came in and everyone else exited their tents. Just like the soldiers' tents from earlier, our tent shook and collapsed and fell straight. My mom was now frightened and said that it was time to leave. As we all got the vehicles ready to leave, we noticed 2 cars had their tires cut. It seemed like claw marks on them. Everyone was shaken up at this point. My dad recommended that we all sleep in our bags next to the fire pit where my uncles were hanging out and they could keep guard. Some slept and some, like me, just stayed up the whole night. Morning broke and we called our roadside assistant. They came and replaced our tires and we all returned home. A few days passed and nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until one day both my uncles and the soldiers returned to their duty overseas. That night we got back from saying goodbye to my uncles and I had a dream that we were back at the waterfall. I was on the log bridge and was staring down at the waterfall, not being able to move a single muscle. I wanted to turn back towards where we had camped. I saw the waterfall slowly open, and then the woman came out. Her semi-bald head with white hair and a black dress, smiling at me menacingly and laughing. She then said in Hmong, "I got you now. You won't get away this time." As she floated towards me, I began crying. I told her to not kill me, and she kept on laughing and coming closer and closer to me. She touched my neck with her cold hands and laughed, saying in Hmong, "Now I got you." I suddenly woke up, drenched in sweat, not being able to breathe. I went to the bathroom and saw I had what looked like hand marks on my neck. I then went into my parents' room and woke them up and told them about what I dreamt about and showed them my neck. I broke down and started crying. My mom and dad comforted me and I slept in their arms. The following day we called a shaman. The shaman lady came over and she explained that this ghost is strong and wants to take my life and exchange it for hers. It started to grow fond of me. We needed to do a wanding as soon as possible or else she will take me, and she's already so close to doing so. On the days leading up to the wanding, we began to see the woman in our house, and more paranormal activity began to happen around our home. The day of the wanding came, and after a couple of hours, the shaman stepped down. She was so exhausted and she explained to us, "This woman lived in Duluth years ago and would always go to that waterfall to hang out with her friends. An accident happened and she fell off and was killed. She wanted to exchange lives and would not stop until she had mine." My dad and my brothers then took out a box of some of my belongings and dressed up a cat in some of my clothes and returned it back up to that waterfall to release it. Things began to go back to normal and we stopped going camping as well. From that moment on, it still haunts me. I have legally changed my name and only my close relatives call me by my real name. This happened back in 2023 in the month of April. During those times, I would go out late and come home in the middle of the night. I would have sleep paralysis, and I don't know if it was because I would come home late at night to bring a spirit with me, or maybe if there was another reason. My third older brother and I slept upstairs in the attic. He sleeps across from me. That night was around 11 p.m. My brother was already asleep and I was about to fall asleep. By the time I knocked out, I started dreaming about my friends and I and my cousins, we were playing some sort of a game. It might have been tag or something, I don't really remember, but there would be a random person who was a little girl. At first, I couldn't really see her face all that well, but she seemed like a normal person. She would be the one chasing all of us, and I don't completely remember what really happened, but what I do remember was that I was the one getting chased the most. I would run the same direction as my friend and cousins, but I thought to myself that if I changed directions, maybe the little girl would chase the others. I separated myself from the others, thinking that I perhaps had lost her. I got tired and rested at one spot and realized that she was behind me, across the street. This time, it wasn't the little girl anymore. It was a different girl who looked deep inside of me with her two big eyes. I freaked out. After staring at her for a bit, 5 to 8 seconds, she started to run towards me. I got scared and ran as fast as I could. I was too scared to turn back and look at her. All I could think of was to keep quiet and keep running. After that, I saw a fence in front of me. I didn't think of turning right or left, so I decided to climb on the fence and jump off. But what I didn't know was that behind the fence, there was an animal trap. It was a big hole that was dug up and stacked with sharp-tipped bamboo. The hole was covered and I couldn't think of anything and accidentally jumped in that hole and died. Before I died in my dreams, and before I slowly closed my eyes, I saw the lady who was chasing me looking down. Her face was rotten and bloody and dark. Her eyes were wide open, staring deep into my soul. I slowly closed my eyes while her face was in my vision. What was weird is that after I died in my dream, I woke up to reality. I didn't think too much about it and just honestly didn't care. I just thought that it was a weird dream and then went back to sleep. And that's when the sleep paralysis began. I fell asleep really quickly and started to dream, but this time, all I saw was my room. I thought to myself, did I perhaps wake up again? So I looked around and started having that pressure on me, almost as if someone was sitting on top of me, holding me down. My heart started to beat very fast and I began to breathe heavily. I yelled out for my brother, not knowing if he was there or not, but he could not hear me at all. Even I couldn't hear myself. My mouth talked, but it was as if someone covered my mouth. I tried to move and could not. While I was trying to escape, I suddenly heard a woman call my name. That woman called my name 3 times, and then, out of nowhere, I heard someone with a very deep voice laughing. I was so freaked out and wondered what the heck that was. I tried my best to break away to finally wake up. Eventually, I woke up from my sleep paralysis and I could feel my heart racing very fast. I was struggling to breathe and my back was sweating. It was around 12:30 a.m. and I went downstairs to tell my mom about it. She had just gotten home from work and then lectured me about going out late at night, and that what if I brought something or someone home. After that, she made me sleep in the basement where my sister and little brother were, hoping that the spirit or ghost won't find me there. I slept on my little brother's bed and she put a little Hmong knife behind my pillow, but every time I would try to fall asleep, I would feel that pressure again, as if someone was trying to sit on top of me. I couldn't sleep but stayed awake the whole night. This sleep paralysis happened a week straight until my parents asked a shaman to do something. After that, I didn't have any sleep paralysis anymore until this year, the month of April 2024. This year, I moved to sleep in the basement because my oldest brother and my sister-in-law moved in with us. But this sleep paralysis is different from last year. I don't really go out late at night anymore, but I have a feeling that it's because of the side area that I sleep in at night. Even today, I still sleep in that same spot. I built a room on this side of the basement. One side is covered up with a plastic wall and the rest is covered with a curtain. I've heard things about not sleeping across the door, but behind the curtain there is a door to the storage room, so I thought that perhaps it was okay, that it was fine. However, what I would not expect is that my sleep paralysis would happen again. This occurred to me for a whole week straight, where the spirit or ghost would come and talk to me as a mimic in my dreams. It pretended to be someone that I knew, either my family or friends. Here is one of the strange dreams that I had. In my dreams, it was already late. I walked downstairs to the basement and saw my cousin standing next to the bathroom. I asked him why he was here, and he told me that he just got off work and just came to see me and talk with me for a bit. So I told him that it was okay and that he can hang out with me in my room. The two of us went into my room and I was laying on my bed, and he was sitting on my chair. From what I remembered, we were talking for a bit of time, and all of a sudden, I started feeling that weird pressure where you know that you're getting sat on. I got sleep paralysis a lot of times and realized that it was happening to me again, and I couldn't move myself. And then I looked at my cousin, who started to touch me. I didn't understand why my vision was getting blurry, but while looking at him, he didn't look like my cousin anymore. It was as if him or the thing had transformed and changed into someone else. After trying to escape, I took one last look at him and realized that it wasn't him. It was a random lady. Her hair was covering her whole face. Everything about her, including her appearance, was dark, and after that I escaped and woke up from my dream. And to this day, as I think about it, I wonder if these things where spirits or ghosts can become a mimic and pretend to be someone else. This story is alright. This happened to me about 5 years ago. It was a Friday night and my brothers and parents went out to eat. I fell asleep, so I didn't get to go. 2 hours went by and I woke up from my nap. It was already 8:49 p.m. and it was dark outside. I had gotten up to go turn on the lights. When I was in the living room, I heard a faint thud coming from my brother's room upstairs. I stopped and thought to myself, that's weird. I don't think my brothers are home yet. So then I went into my room and laid on my bed. I had my door open and my lights were off. 15 minutes go by and I heard someone or something walking and running up the stairs. I stopped for a second and thought to myself, what the hell was that? I also knew that I wasn't alone at this point. I kept on thinking and thinking until I got really paranoid. About an hour goes by and no one has gotten home yet. I decided to sleep because I got tired, and when I fell asleep, I felt something breathing on me. I didn't dare to open my eyes because I knew that if I did, I would just scare myself. That person or thing still continued to breathe on me, and I was getting very afraid. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to scream really loud. When I screamed, my mom came into my room and asked me what happened. I got up and I cried in my mom's arms. I told her that someone was breathing on me and I didn't know what to do, but it was all just a bad dream. When I looked up on who I hugged, it wasn't my mom. It was my dead grandma from Thailand. I screamed and finally woke up from my dream. My brothers and parents were all in my room. I asked them what they were doing in my room, and my dad told me that I wasn't waking up and they thought someone came and took my soul. 2 weeks later, we had a shaman come and onang for me, and everything became better.